Adelsberger, and I'm the Vice President of Scholarship for Panhellenic Council. I'm a member of Delta Zeta, and I'm a sophomore studying a double major in Public Communications and Organizational Communications. My educational career has brought me to take a couple classes that I can honestly say didn't exactly love. For example, I've taken criminal justice, dance history, philosophy, and of course, History 150. If you've taken History 150, you know that either you loved it or you hated it. But there's always a few takeaways. One of the takeaways is the reason that I stand here tonight. It's not because I learned about the Seljuks, and it's not because I learned about the Roman Empire. It's because of Professor Ayalon's last 7 minutes of each lecture. Those 7 minutes were everything that I felt like I needed to hear. It was everything that I knew that I needed to hear to be successful. So I would like to thank you for being here tonight. So often we get caught up memorizing definitions word for word and chemical equations and axioms and theorems that we don't realize that this isn't the information that is important. This knowledge is nothing if we don't know how to take the next steps to make our educational career successful in the future. Something that will really stick with you for a lifetime is something that we all have in common, and that is a goal. There's a lot to it, getting to that goal, right? Because there's internships, and there's recommendation letters, and sample writing, and portfolios that sometimes we don't even know if we can match up to the job description. There's a lot to be prepared for. Raise your hand if you're even a little bit scared about what's going to happen after college. Right? Yeah. I know it, he knows it, she knows it, we all know it. And it's a scary world out there. But you're in the right spot. And that's being here tonight. I wouldn't trust anyone else except for Professor Ayalon to tell you how to make your dreams into a reality. So this is how it's going to go. There's going to be a lecture and then a Q&A. You must stay for the event in its entirety if you want to be counted as an attendee. If it is not mandatory for you, please be respectful and do not leave early. Also, please silence your cell phones. Our speaker tonight is Dr. Yaron Ayalon, Assistant Professor of History. Dr. Ayalon is a historian of the Middle East. He arrived at Ball State this year. Previously, he taught at Emory University and the University of Oklahoma. Dr. Ayalon was born in New Jersey and spent most of his childhood in Israel. As an undergrad, he studied at Tel Aviv University in Israel, graduating with a double major in education and Middle East history. He got his doctoral degree from Princeton University in 2009. Tonight, for the last lecture, Dr. Ayalon will be summing up his 7-minute speeches for History 150 into one speech made just for you. Let's give him a warm welcome, Dr. Ayalon.
Well, with this kind of introduction, I don't know, now the expectations are very high, and I'm not so sure I can meet them. Earlier today, I learned that next semester I'll be teaching a class with 200 people, and I thought, wow, that's going to be the largest audience I've ever spoken to, except that I suspect that the record will be broken tonight, or has already been broken, but I just can't see everyone that's sitting back. Anyways, tonight I'm supposed to speak to you as if this would be my last lecture, ever. And I have to say, when I first got invited to do this, I thought, you know, wow, I must have been a really, really terrible teacher if my students already want to get rid of me after one semester at Ball State. I mean, after all, the last guy who made this last lecture really famous ended up dead, right? So I didn't know how to feel about this. The problem was that I really wasn't so sure what I should say. So I went to YouTube and started watching videos of professors at other universities who had given this talk before. This is not the new format, as most of you probably know. And I thought maybe these guys would help me brainstorm. But after about an hour of watching these videos, I realized you know, these guys, all they do is just talk about themselves. So I thought, why not? I can do that too, right? It's very easy to talk about myself. I'm a historian, I'm a professor, I love to talk. I can just stand here for 5 hours and just talk about myself. So I said, why not? I can tell you about, for instance, my early childhood in New Jersey, right? I can tell you how it inspired me to pursue my dreams and do what I really love. I can also tell you how, as a teenager, I really wanted to be Slash from Guns N' Roses. I really wanted to be an awesome guitar player. I really wanted to have long, black, curly hair, just like him. You know, I thought that surely is going to help me get all the girls, right? Well, I have to say that didn't exactly work out the way I had planned. Yeah, that's me at about 15. So I can go on and tell you about me and my dreams and how I achieved them and where I failed and how, you know, where I did succeed and how I really have the best job in the world, even though most of you will end up making more money after 2 or 3 years of graduating from here than I make after spending 10 years in school. But so what, right? The thing is, I don't really want to talk about me. I want to talk about you. You see, one of the things that I love so much about my job is that I get to talk to students about their plans for the future and all sorts of life issues in general, and their problems and the challenges of being in college. In fact, I like that part more than being in the classroom. So often when students come and talk to me, I start the conversation by asking, you know, if you could become anything you want professionally. I know some people in this audience already know where this is going. If you could become anything you wanted professionally, no restrictions, no money issues, no family commitments, no sort of restriction that ties you to a particular place, no problems believing in yourself that you could actually make it. All you have to do is imagine it, say, I want it, and you become that person. What would it be? So you know what, let's try this experiment here. Here's the question. Take a few seconds to think about this. Close your eyes if you need to. And try to think, what is this one thing? What is that one thing that if really, really, really everything was possible, no restrictions whatsoever, what would that one thing be? Take a few seconds to think about this. Don't shout it out loud because we're too many people. Just think about it for a second. And then, if you know, or you think you know what that thing might be, please just raise your hand. Okay. All right. Now, that's not too many people. So what? Most of you don't have dreams? This is very strange. Now let's see. If among those of you who just raised your hand, please raise your hand again only if you are 100% sure that you can actually make that dream happen. I would say, what? 5 out of 500 people, whatever, 1%? What is it really? Do we all have unrealistic goals? Is that a thing? Or maybe we were just taught that dreams are for kids, right? Now we are adults, we are responsible people, we go to college. We can't just dream like little kids anymore. Maybe we have to be reasonable. We have to settle for a seemingly attainable goal. We need to be realistic and go for something that, well, maybe would bring in a decent income. Maybe a profession that would allow us to help other people. Maybe something that eventually one day we'll actually get excited about. Well, okay. Last semester, and also this one, I ran a short survey among my students. And some of you are here, you know what I'm talking about. There was a statement on that survey, and I asked my students to simply say whether that statement is true or false for them. That's it, just say true or false, whether it applies to you or not. The statement was, in the future, I could get into any top graduate program, such as Ivy League programs. And for that question, assume that funding isn't an issue, meaning if you got in, you get to go. Okay? Before I tell you what my students said, I want you to, again, think about this for a moment. And raise your hand only if you believe that this statement is true for you. That you can get into any top graduate program in whatever field you feel like pursuing. Nobody. Yeah, 3 people doesn't make it much better. So much for believing in ourselves, right? Let me tell you, and if I combine the information for the different classes where I ran that survey, it's about 75% of my students who said, no, we can't do it, which is actually far better than you guys, but okay. And then I asked myself, how come? How is it possible that so many young, bright, talented people have relatively little faith in their own abilities? So I started to look for answers, and they weren't really so hard to find. We can talk about all sorts of factors, such as money, or lack of it. Maybe you believe that, I'm sure many people in this room believe that if you're not rich, you can't go to a fancy private school. Maybe you can't get a 6-figure salary job in Manhattan. You probably can't even afford to go to Manhattan, right? We can talk about growing up in a family where no one else before you went to college. And there's no one to get good professional advice from, because no one around you was ever allowed to dream big, or even knows what dreaming big actually feels like. We can talk about attending a mediocre high school, where the teachers themselves have never had big ambitions. I'm, of course, not saying that being a teacher is not a great ambition. After all, I'm a teacher too. But again, teachers who never had big ambitions, maybe, I don't know. So they wouldn't know how to push their students to dream. We can probably also talk about us, professors, because often we just go along with what you guys tell us that you want to do, instead of trying to push you harder and challenge you to go for something a little more ambitious. We can also talk about the still relatively traditional society that we live in, that assigns us certain roles and expects us to fulfill them, and so desperately wants to fit us into certain templates, that perhaps there's very little room left for thinking outside the box. I think the latter issue is more of a serious problem for women. You see, if 75% of the students that I surveyed said, no, we can't do it, if I leave out the guys, I just look at the women who said it, I get 92% of female students who said, no, essentially, we don't believe in ourselves. We can't go to any program we want. So what is it? Is it the expected role of women in society? Is it that push that sometimes talented boys, when they're in school, they get, but talented girls do not? We see this, it happens often. Maybe, in fact, I just got it all wrong. Maybe women make 77 cents on the dollar per the national average for doing the same job as men because they are simply incapable of dreaming big like men. Maybe they just can't do the same type of work that men do, so they get paid less. I finally nailed it. That's the explanation, right? Or maybe not. Whatever the reason, I think the lesson is clear. We can all do more than we are doing. We can all have a more meaningful and fulfilling life, and we should all at least try to achieve our dreams. Now here's the thing, if you're not sure what your big dream really is yet, perhaps it's time to get some advice. Maybe all of the factors I've just mentioned have inhibited your ability to think widely or unconventionally about your own desires. So maybe you should talk to people, friends, professors, family. Listen to those who encourage you and stop listening to those people who keep telling you that you can't do it. If you do have a dream and you're already on the way to accomplishing it, if your major is your passion, if you know where you want to be 5 or 10 years from now, and you also know how to make it happen, well, good for you. But you should still get that same advice, because it may very well be that even within that area that's yours that you really want to pursue, you are simply not reaching far enough. maybe you should not have come to Ball State, but to a fancy private school. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm really happy that you're all here. But maybe, just maybe, someone earlier in life just gave you really lousy advice. It is possible, right? Maybe you should try out for that top master's program in your field, and not just the convenient one that's relatively easy to get into. Whatever the case, once you figure out your dream, you'll need a plan to get there. And it needs to be a solid and feasible one. It needs to be based on research and advice. And it needs to include a plan B and probably also a plan C. And you know what? This plan is going to change down the road several times, and that's okay too. If you still don't have this clearly defined path, it's probably time to start thinking about it, and it doesn't matter if you're a freshman or a senior. A good plan will actually give you everything, will give everything you're doing a purpose. And so if it changes down the road, that's fine, but you still have it. It will very likely boost your grades, because there will suddenly be a reason to do really well in school. It will help you choose between different volunteer and internship and employment opportunities, manage your time better. And it will also make you believe that you can do things that maybe right now you think you can't. This is all based on my personal experience, by the way. The students who actually made plans and their grades just have gone up without them actually putting any effort into doing homework or whatever it is. So I think right now what I just said, that you need to have a plan, that's no big news to anyone here. Even if you don't have one, you are probably aware of the need to have a plan for what you want to do next at some point. But I'm here to argue that having a plan actually isn't enough. It needs to be an ambitious plan. And the less prestigious the school you attend on the national level, the more ambitious your plan has to be. And I'll tell you why. Someone might come to me and say, wait a minute, why can I not just have modest goals? What's wrong with that? Well, if you haven't noticed, while you're here in college, enjoying the wonderful educational opportunities and the somewhat less educational BSU Fashions Twitter page, the world outside is becoming more and more competitive. There are, horrible page by the way, there are many more applicants for each decent job for which a BA degree is needed, and many, many more applicants for graduate school positions that potentially lead to a better job. Now, when competition is so tough, those who are better prepared will be the winners, and everyone else will be the loser. That's just the nature of things. So, when there are hundreds of applicants for each good job, you can't afford to just be okay. Because being just okay will likely lead you to a career that you could have pursued without going to college. And if that's the case, then what are you doing here? Why are you wasting your time? You know, there are pretty good careers that you can pursue without going to college. What's the point? Now, one of you might tell me, I don't get it. All of this, one of you might tell me, are questions that people actually ask me. I'm not making them up, right? Someone might tell me, what if I don't have what it takes to get this great job with one of those wonderful companies or corporations? What if I can't get into a top graduate program? What if my GPA isn't so great? I mean, who's even going to look at me in places like New York or DC with a 3.0 GPA from Ball State? Look, I know I promised I'm not going to talk about myself in that promo video that some of you watched, I guess. But here's a little detail about me that some of you obviously know if you watch the video. I was an okay student as an undergrad. You know, I had A's and B's. I had some C's and D's. Okay, more A's and B's than C's and D's, but still. And I still got to go to my dream PhD program at Princeton. 5 years, fully funded. All I had to do was study. They even paid me a stipend. And I don't have any debt. I graduated without any debt. I don't owe money to anyone. Well, okay. Maybe to some people, but not to any institutions anyway. And I have to say, I'm not smarter than anyone sitting in this room. Unfortunately, I'm a little older. Well, at least a little older than most of you. So here's the thing. I had a dream. I knew it would be very hard to achieve. But I had a plan. I had a list of what I needed to do to get there. And I had the right people on my side to give me good advice, and also to write letters of recommendation on my behalf. And I also had some luck. You also need a little bit of luck in life, you know? You can't control luck. We all know that. But you can shape all the other elements in your story. I can't promise you that if you follow my advice, you will definitely get there. Because let's face it, not everyone sitting in this room will get to go to Harvard or Stanford. Not everyone sitting in this room will get to work for Google or CNN or the Boston Consulting Group. But I can promise you that if you don't try, if you don't set out to pursue this seemingly impossible, you will definitely not get there. So let's talk about how to make it happen. I think that's a more constructive approach. There are several ways to address this question, but what to me seems by far the most important is to realize that achieving your dreams and your goals has very little to do, actually, with the major you choose or the grades you get in college. With some exceptions. If you really know you want to be a nurse and you need to be a nursing major, okay, fine. But these are the exceptions rather than the rule. So if your major reflects not your passion, not what you really, really want to do, maybe it reflects what you're sort of okay doing, but it's not your dream. Maybe it's what your parents told you to study because they believe that can lead you to a good career, that you'll find a decent job with a decent income. So that's what you should study. If that's your case, well, I got news for you. It isn't true. It doesn't work that way. It is rather the skills you pick up while you're in college and your ability to demonstrate those skills that will have the most profound effect on your career. And these skills, beyond, as I said, some profession-specific ones, are such that you can pick up in so many different areas of study. Now, let me give you a few examples of such skills. Number one is writing. This one tops my list, and it should really be at the top of your list too. And I can talk about this for hours. My students know this. I'm very passionate about this issue. But I'll just say a few things here. It's no secret that none of us in this room writes as well as people who went to college 20, 30, or 40 years ago did. Myself included. That's because back then, there was no internet or PlayStation. TV wasn't really that appealing. And so people read a lot more. And, you know, there are no shortcuts here. When you read more, your language becomes richer and more sophisticated, and that also affects your writing. How important is it actually to be a good writer? Let me tell you. I play bowling twice a month in a league. I am one of the worst players in the league. I admit it. In fact, it's probably because of me that our team dropped from first place to 10th. Not something to be proud of, but I admit it, that's the fact. The thing is, the people I play with, they're a diverse group of professionals. They're also professionals when it comes to bowling. But they're professionals, they work for some of them are quite senior in their respective fields. So I got a chance to ask many of them, how important is writing for them when they hire college graduates, or when their companies hire college graduates? And I have to tell you, there's overwhelming consensus. People out there in the professional world, they're underwhelmed by the level of writing they have been seeing in recent years from college graduates. Vocabulary that's too simplistic, too many grammatical errors, and an overall writing style that fits someone in middle school, not a graduate from college. Such resumes and cover letters that come from such people, that's what they tell me, they really get no serious consideration. Now, of course, there's an upside to this very morose description, which is, if you are someone who writes really well, your application will immediately stand out, assuming that you qualify for the actual position, that is. The lesson to learn from this is that good writing is something that people notice, and nowadays it has become something that many employers and also grad school admissions people are looking for, even in areas that don't actually require writing. And they do so because good writing is also an indication for various other qualities. I want you to think about this for a second. When you apply for a job after college, or for graduate programs, the first impression you make is in writing, right? Because you send in an application. The first impression you make is in writing. If you fail there, you are never going to get that face-to-face interview. So the fact that all of you have wonderful people skills is not going to help you, because no one's going to talk to you anyways. You see, it isn't just decent writing. You need to be really good at this. Because the image you should have in your mind is this. You are applying for a job, and it's a really good job, and it's a job that you really want. And you write a 2-page cover letter, because that's what the job description asks you to do. And 100 other people are applying for the same job, because we just said it's a really cool job, right? One person has to read all of the applications. Remember what I said about luck, right? You can't control luck, so you have to assume the worst. The worst is that the person reading your application is very tired, that your application is at the bottom of the pile, it's 7 p.m., and that person really wants to go home. Assume the worst. You are the last one in the pile. Now, let's hear, what do you guys think? How many seconds do you think? How many seconds of attention do you actually get? 7. Other numbers? How many seconds? 3 seconds. No, that's a little short. Give the guy a little bit of credit. Huh?
20.
15, 20? Anyone thinks that you get like 2 minutes of attention? Okay. I would say that if you get 20 or 30 seconds, that's really generous. And that means that your first paragraph has to be really good. If your first paragraph is not the best thing that person has read in a while, you are not getting the interview. That's what you're facing. So can you make that happen? That's a big question. Let me, by the way, also add a comment that this bad impression can start even before your application. For instance, many people send emails to inquire about the position, right? You send an email to ask questions for a position for a graduate school program. I have to tell you, you have no idea how many emails I get every week that are so full of grammatical, not to mention spelling errors. So much so that sometimes I can't even tell what the student is trying to ask me. I just have no idea what the question is. Now, that's me, so who cares, right? But one such email to your prospective employer, and you've just sabotaged your chances of getting hired. You know, writing that's anything but crisp and clear makes you look, I'm sorry to say, illiterate and uneducated. And no one wants to have such people on their team. That's the way it is. And it doesn't matter that I know that all of you are wonderful. But it's not me that you have to impress. So, the thing is, not everyone is born with great writing skills, right? So what do? First, I would say start reading. If you don't enjoy reading, do it just because it's a good investment in your future. And that should be enough reason to do it. And read real books, not these obscure websites. And read about things that actually matter to you and interest you, because that'll make you want to read more. The other thing is practice. Whenever you have the chance to write a paper in class, do it. And ask your professors to write comments. I know not all teachers would write comments. I'm well aware of teachers who just mark a little V and write C- and you have no idea why you got that grade. But ask your teachers to write comments. Not all of them will do that automatically, but many professors will do it if you actually ask for it. And by the way, do not assume that if you got A's on a few papers that you're actually a really good writer. It might be, but I have to admit here, many professors, they don't feel that part of their job is to teach you how to write. And they'd give you an A, as long as you fit some list of basic criteria. This I say to the dismay of some students who had written papers in my classes. Some of you guys already know that. I think other professors used to care much about writing, but in recent years they have seen so much subpar writing that they've just given up. So that level of writing, while it might work in your classes, might not cut it in the real world. The other tip I can give you is that you should share your writing with others. When you write papers for class, before you submit it, exchange papers with others and share them. No, it's not called cheating. I'm sorry. You have written the paper yourself. All you're doing is getting feedback from somebody else as to the quality of your writing. Of course, do it with someone you actually trust, not someone who will copy your essay and then submit it in their name. This is actually the best exercise you can get, because once you've seen how other people mess up their writing, it's going to help you write better. And finally, you should get some professional help. We have a writing center here, but there are many really excellent writing guides, either in hard copy or actually online. I don't want to promote myself, but I've designed one such online writing guide. It even has the somewhat presumptuous title, Writing Master. But there are, of course, many others, and you should use them. And finally, I'll say, don't despair. Learning how to write is a long process. And you will probably see improvement in months if you work on it, but depending on your starting point, it might actually take you years to get where you want, and that's okay too. Because, it's very easy for me now to criticize the writing of my students, but I have to say, I don't think I was much better when I was an undergrad. This is me trying to be fair, I guess. So, also, you need to realize a few things. If you grew up in a house where no one went to college before, where few books were actually available, where both of your parents were working long hours and they didn't have too much time to do homework with you, or maybe there was no one to take you to the public library for story time, or maybe there just wasn't any public library where you grew up, and if you went through a relatively not so great school system, you probably have more work to do than others. But that does not mean that you can't make it happen. You can, and you need to start believing that you can. Since we are already talking about writing, I'd like to move on to another form of literacy, and I like to call it digital literacy. By this, I don't mean the ability to operate a computer, write up a document on Microsoft Word, or use Facebook. More and more employers are now looking for college graduates who can actually do really cool stuff with technology and with computers, in addition to all the other skills they're looking for. So what you really should ask yourself is, do I know, for instance, how to build a virtual library through scanning and manipulating documents using Adobe Acrobat? Do I know how to use Photoshop? Can I edit a video? Can I process statistical data using software such as Excel or SPSS or SAS? Can I build a website on platforms such as WordPress and then use HTML, JavaScript, or PHP to edit that website? Can I use social media professionally for marketing purposes? And more important than all of that, how fast can I actually pick up those skills? If you have no idea what all of these terms I just mentioned are, that's okay. Maybe computers, maybe you feel computers are not your thing. It's not too late to learn, and the good news is that most of these skills take relatively little time to master. And once you have, and you can demonstrate that you have, you'll become a lot more appealing to potential employers. There's another issue, unlike computer skills, there's another skill that involves a language, but it's not a programming language, it's a foreign language. Foreign languages obviously take a lot longer to learn than computer skills, but they are equally, if not more, important. You may not need a foreign language to graduate from college. I think most programs here don't require it. You may not need a foreign language to actually pursue the career that you have chosen for yourself. But learning another language will open up many opportunities for you down the road, and most of these you cannot imagine right now. That's because knowing foreign languages indicates not only to you and the people around you, but to potential people who might hire you in the future, and people who might accept you to grad school, that you're curious and worldly and understand and accept cultural diversity. and hence also more likely to show creativity on the job. These are all attributes that will help you succeed in this world's tough competition. Of course, knowing a foreign language isn't the only way you can demonstrate all of these qualities. One of the things that really don't make a great impression is people who have never left their hometown or their state or their country. Now I know you can attend school all you want. You can take all the right classes. You can have a really awesome GPA. You can be a wonderful writer. But an experienced interviewer will be able to tell right away if you're the kind of person who has not traveled farther away than Muncie or Ohio or Chicago. For top employers in grad schools, this is a serious red flag, because what it indicates to them is that you might have a very limited provincial mindset, that you might hesitate stepping out of your comfort zone, that you may not have enough curiosity within you, that you're not ambitious, that you don't understand cultural diversity, that your knowledge about the world is very limited. And in this global age, nobody wants to hire such people. Now, before you all get angry at me for implying that you're all like that, because I didn't, I know someone might say, look, I had real circumstances that prevented me from traveling. I don't have money. Or I have family obligations. These are real reasons. It's not that I'm not interested in traveling. I am. I really would want to take a backpack and go to Europe for a month. But I can't do it. Well, what can I say? Unfortunately, it isn't me that you need to convince. It's a very competitive world out there, and if you want to end up with a career substantially better than the one that you could have had without attending college, you probably need to think about that. You know, I've taught in state and private colleges, and I have to say the number of students I've met here on this campus who have not been to New York, DC, LA, Boston, not to mention London, Paris, or Berlin, is quite high. And if you're one of those people who has had limited exposure to places outside of your home state, you should seriously start thinking about things like traveling somewhere or study abroad. And again, I have to admit the responsibility for this also lies on us faculty and the university, because there are universities where professors actually push all their students to study at least a summer or a semester abroad, because they understand that this might put them in a far better position down the road. At the end, even if you can't go overseas or fit learning a new language into your schedule, there are still things you can do to demonstrate all the qualities that I've been describing so far. For instance, nowadays, it's not a secret, CEOs of major companies have said this many times, that for any position that doesn't require a professional degree, like a lawyer or an engineer, they would rather hire college graduates who are broadly educated, who majored in fields such as the liberal arts, but not only the liberal arts, rather than in a one-dimensional area, such as perhaps finance or business. The logic being, I can teach an intelligent person all the business skills I know on the job in about 2 weeks. But I can't teach someone to be creative, to be curious, to have general knowledge about the world. I can't do that. This attitude is in fact supported by lots of data, which clearly shows that while liberal arts majors start up with lower salaries than people who are business majors, within a few years, they on average actually end up making more money. And if you think about it carefully, it does make sense, because the liberal arts, they teach you to be all of these things: worldly person, enjoy the mere fact of just expanding your knowledge for the sake of knowing stuff, regardless of the practical implications, thinking outside the box, being open-minded, and so on. The liberal arts, they teach you all of these things, and that eventually translates to the better jobs, but of course you have to be patient. So, you know, when students come to me and ask, what can I possibly do with a history degree in history major, I tell them the basic answers. You could pursue government jobs, you can be a teacher, you can work at a museum. But then I also add, you know, with a history major, you're really well prepared for grad school in business and law and public health and a lot of other fields. And that's because we teach you all the relevant skills in addition to actually teaching you something about the past. Now here's the cool thing. We are not the only department that does that. There are lots of departments on this campus that offer you training in all of those skills that I mentioned. We just happen to be the best one. I have to say that, right? I am being videotaped after all. Now I look at your faces and I know what you're thinking. You know, not everyone can or wants to be a history major. Not everyone is interested in history. Some people don't even have a choice. You know, what if my parents are the ones who decide what I'm studying? You know, they're paying our tuition. They get to make the choice. Maybe I really want to be a professional dancer or a nurse. Why would I be a history major? If that's your case, and these are all fair arguments, at the very least, you should treat those core classes that everyone hates but everyone has to take, right, as your opportunity. It might be, in fact, your last opportunity to acquire some of those skills that I've been talking about today. Look, I teach one of those classes. In fact, some of my former and current students from these classes are here tonight, including the person who just introduced me. So I'm very well aware of how much you guys don't want to be in those classes. But guess what? You already have to do it. So you have two options. One is to say, well, I'm going to drag my feet to the finish line. I just want this to be over. Who cares if I learn anything? So I'll get a C. I'm going to get A's in all the classes in my major, so that's great. And you're going to suffer. And you're just going to wait for the day that the class ends and you don't have to see that annoying professor ever again. Or you can choose a more constructive approach and say, you know, I already have to be here. I might as well get something out of this class since I'm spending my time. And of course the choice is totally yours. All right, so I've spoken so far about the importance of making good plans and building those skills that would help you succeed. And I think it's also as important to dream big on the one hand, but also be realistic and honest with yourself on the other. If you're behind on something, for instance, if you can't figure out how to extract the main argument from a 20-page text when everyone in your class can do it, or if it takes you hours to complete an assignment that should take minutes, don't just give up. Put some effort into it. Realize that you might have to work harder than other people, but at the end, you are going to close that gap. It might take years. It depends on how big the gap is, but then eventually it's going to pay off. In other words, know your limits, but then be willing to stretch and reshape them. Find people who will be on your side. But for real, I'm talking about mentors who will believe in you more than you believe in yourself, who will be completely committed to your success, who will rejoice when you win and cry when you lose. It doesn't have to be your professors, but it very well can be, because a good teacher will help you make a plan and follow up with you to make sure you don't lose steam, because that plan is going to be so demanding and challenging and frustrating at times that you will want to give up. Be willing to be your own man or woman. Your parents are important, and you should respect them and their wishes, but at the end, it is your life, not theirs. And you need to figure out a way to own it. You have to be the ones shattering social conventions and reshaping others' expectations of you. You have to be the ones breaking the brick wall that is there to keep your achievements modest and your dreams curtailed. No one, not your teachers, not your friends, not your parents, is going to do that for you. You know, this last lecture model became really famous in October of 2007 when Randy Pausch was a professor of computer science at Carnegie Mellon University, who was dying of cancer. He delivered his last lecture, in his case it was really his last lecture, about achieving your childhood dreams. The video of that lecture got some 16 million views on YouTube. Who knows, maybe I'll get that lucky, huh? 2 months before he died, he delivered a commencement speech at Carnegie Mellon. That was on May 18th of 2008. And this is part of what he had to say. It is not the things we do in life that we regret on our deathbed. It is the things we do not. Because I assure you, I've done a lot of stupid things. And none of them bother me. What matters is, pretty much any time I got a chance to do something cool, I try to grab for it. You will need to find your passion. Many of you have already done it. Many of you will later. Many of you may take till your 30s or 40s. But don't give up on finding it. You will not find that passion in things, and you will not find that passion in money. Your passion must come from the things that fuel you from the inside. And on that note, I'll end. Thank you.
For Q&A. Please be respectful right now. How we're going to do it is there's going to be 2 lines on each side of the stage, and you can take the microphone and ask your question, and then Professor Ayalon will answer it.
Okay.
I guess the first question, a lot of news anchors and a lot of studies have shown that it's not necessarily a lack of confidence, but a lack of effort in our generation as a whole. So I feel like a lot of your lecture has focused on lack of confidence, but do you feel like it's more confidence-driven or just effort-driven? A lot of what you explained.
Thank you very much. I think that these 2 things are really tied to each other. I think that if you don't have confidence, you are less likely to put in more effort. And I don't really see how we separate those 2 things. I don't know too many people who have absolutely no confidence in themselves, yet put in a lot of effort in something that they have no idea, where that thing's going to lead them. So I agree. I think that problem exists too. Yes, I talked about effort. But I did a little bit also talk about believing in yourself, which is kind of related to confidence. And again, I really just believe that these 2 things are related. I don't see how one can be treated or discussed without the other. It's true, there are a lot of people who are very confident and don't want to put in any effort. And then we have to try to figure out why. Why is it that you don't want to put any effort into your own future? That's a good question, but obviously the answer is very individual. So.
What advice would you give to someone who's still trying to figure out what their life plan is?
Thank you. The advice I would give is exactly what I said. You should start talking to people. You should find the people that actually want to talk to you. And we just had this discussion in my class, I guess, 2 weeks ago or so. And what I say is this. You need to find people who are interested in actually hearing you out and helping you beyond just talking to you about classwork. Now, here I'm talking about professors because we are here on campus, and the people you might want to get advice from are professors, but of course, maybe you work somewhere and your boss could give you the same advice too. That's fine. But when it comes to your teachers, let's face it, not everyone wants to sit with you for an hour and have a conversation. I mean, how many of you have been to a meeting with a professor that even if you wanted to could not last more than 15 minutes because the next student was waiting in line? Huh? How many of you get to talk for more than 1 hour with one of your professors? Okay, not some of you, and that's a good sign, but not too many. Here's the thing. You need to find the people who would actually be interested in talking with you about things that are beyond just classwork. And these people are around. They exist here on the Ball State campus. I've met quite a few of them. And the way to do this is usually to go, and obviously you start talking about class, but at some point, if you can try to raise some personal issue. I mean, don't go into a professor's office and say, "Oh my God, my boyfriend broke up with me last night, you wouldn't believe it." That usually is not going to work. But bringing in some personal issue, like some sort of difficulty that you have, and see how the person reacts to it. Now, people who don't want to talk to you about personal stuff would say, yeah, all right, and then they'll just navigate the conversation back to academics. And that'll be your sign that, okay, maybe this person, really wants to help me academically, but not beyond that. So respect that and just look for somebody else, because not everyone is into that. And I think, really, at the end, I'll say this is the best advice. You just need to talk to people, and more than one person. And start thinking about what you want to do, what interests you, and also what you believe that you can actually be doing. This is a process. It doesn't take one day. Some people here have had quite a few conversations with me about similar topics. And many of them haven't figured it out yet, despite the several conversations that we had. And that's okay. But you need at least to start the process. Of course, it also involves some research that you can do on your own, reading online and the such. But getting advice from someone is the best way to start, from my experience. Yes.
All right. I know that you asked that this entire event be videotaped and that you would like at least 50,000 views. So what are you planning to do if the video ends up being really successful?
And then what? I become rich? Yeah, I set a personal goal of 50,000 views for this video. And the only reason I set this goal is not because I want to be famous and rich. Okay, I do want to be rich, but not really. It's really because I believe that this is a message, what we've discussed here today, something that not enough professors talk about and not enough students hear about. And it needs to be disseminated further than the number of people who attended this talk. What do I do if, I don't know, I get those 16 million views that this guy got? I suppose by that point I'll be really famous. And I can tell you one thing, if that ever ends up generating any income, I will invest that income in something that will benefit students in the future. Because I have to be honest, and I think a lot of people know this, nobody goes into teaching or being a university professor to be rich. If I wanted to be rich, I would go get an MBA and do investment banking. I would be really lousy at it, and I'll still be rich. But that's not what I'm interested in. So the bottom line answer is, if that happens, well, then that would allow me to help more students. And so, who knows, maybe with the help of all of you, this video will be successful and we'll make that happen. I don't know. Okay.
If you could pick one skill that you would use for future development,
Out of all the skills that I mentioned, probably my first, writing. And that just comes from my own experience. I know some people might say, well, dude, you're a historian, of course writing is important for you. But I'm telling you, I hear this all the time. In very many professions, people who know how to write well get the better jobs and are more successful down the road. So if I had to pick just one skill, and by the way, you can be a good writer in any of the majors that are taught here at Ball State, that would be the one thing that I would put all my energy into, if I had to pick just one. Yes?
None of my other professors have ever told students that they can really believe in themselves. So what made you passionate about telling students that they can really follow their dreams?
Thank you. Thanks. I've been thinking about this for a while. And, I had conversations with many students, but what really changed things for me was that last year I was teaching at Emory University. And about slightly more than a year ago, they started at Emory University one of those confessions pages. They call it Emory Secrets. And these are real confessions, not like the website that I referred to earlier in my talk. And when this website started, they have it on a Facebook page, I decided to put up a secret. I called it a professor's secret, and I don't even remember what I typed. And I said, I want to see how students react to it. And you know how these confessions pages work, right? You send in something anonymously, so no one actually knows who you are, except the people who run the system. So I got this, I put it up, and I got, I don't know how many likes, but a nice number. So I said, you know what? Why not? I have another idea. I posted another one. I call it Professor's Secret Part 2. Again, I don't remember what I said. It's all online. You can go and look it up. I just don't remember. And I got even more likes for that. And so I decided, you know, why not? If there are people who are actually interested in what I have to say, some of my ideas, why not share them, right? And I started posting those things. At the end, I got to something like 60 posts. This is all in one semester. But the interesting thing is that somewhere around secret number 10 or 11, I started hearing people on campus as I was walking around talking about this strange guy, this secret professor who posts things on Emory Secrets. Who is this guy? He posts those things that nobody else says. None of our other professors actually talk about those things. And of course, I was, it's very strange to hear people talking about you without, them knowing that it's actually you. Except some of my closest students who, of course, we had discussions about similar issues, so they immediately knew it was me. But they liked the idea of being the only ones who knew the secret, so they didn't tell anyone. And that experience really made me want to do more of this kind of work. And talking to people about their ability, the need, first of all, to believe in themselves and their own abilities, and to share more of this, because I think, to me, that's the most important part that I can do in my job. And look, not everyone has this outlook. Not everyone came into higher education to just work with students. Many people came into higher education and all they're interested in is their research, and that's fine too. But I think that through that experience, plus through just having more and more conversations with students, I found out what I believe is my purpose and what I'm doing in higher education. And so that's how it happened, I guess. That's my answer. Are there any other questions? All right, well.
On that note, we're going to conclude the last lecture. Thank you so much for coming.